The third month of 2022 was just over, but it seems safe to say that the year thus far has been a big one for the industry. Releases like Horizon Forbidden West, Gran Turismo and Elden Ring have certainly done a lot in the actual games department, but it's been a huge year for acquisitions too. In mid-January, Microsoft announced it was acquiring Activision Blizzard. Sony also announced an acquisition at the end of January, that being Destiny 2 developer Bungie. More has always felt inevitable, as many have joked about acquisition season ever since Microsoft went on a shopping spree and picked up a ton of studios a couple of years ago. Now, Sony has announced it is making another acquisition. This time, it's for Jade Raymond's Haven Studios purchased at an unspecified price. One person doesn't make a studio, of course, but it would be unwise to look over Raymond's experience in the industry. She has won numerous awards for her work, as well as having spent time at EA, Ubisoft, and Google. Raymond announced her departure from Stadia Games and Entertainment when Google decided to wind down its approach in the area. She's perhaps most known for her work as a producer and executive producer on the Assassin's Creed franchise, having worked on AC2 and AC Bloodlines. She also worked on Assassin's Creed Unity as a managing director, and in a way, Watch Dogs is her brainchild too. This acquisition doesn't really come as a shock, however. Jade Raymond's studio has reportedly been working on a new live service game on PS5, and with Bungie under its wing, it's clear Sony is looking into a live service future. Having another studio under its belt focusing on this aspect simply makes sense, especially in obtaining Raymond's expertise in the industry too. Of course, Raymond's studio is relatively young, as it was founded after her departure from Google. It was around March 2021, so Haven's new PS5 game is likely still some time away. However, fans of Assassin's Creed may want to keep an eye on Haven Studios. While many ex-Google employees joined Raymond at Haven, so did many former Ubisoft names who worked on the franchise. Live service and Assassin's Creed don't necessarily go hand in hand, but it's that same vision held by many of the developers there. For now, it remains to be seen what comes of this acquisition, as well as Haven's PS5 game. SIE CEO Jim Ryan describes the acquisition, though, the studio's focus on creating an original AAA multiplayer game will not only flex the power of PlayStation 5, but will further expand upon the diverse catalog of gaming experiences that can only be found on PlayStation. We can look at some of the concept arts for their games, which you can find it on the official website of Haven Studios. From the look of things, it appears to be a sci-fi setting, although we won't know anything for certain just yet. Haven Studios is keeping tight-lipped on its debut project for Sony, although a series of job listings for the company has revealed that it may feature live service elements and multiplayer. Last month, it was revealed that the studio had tripled in size as it pushes forward with the project, and a number of former Ubisoft employees have joined up with the studio. Interestingly, Haven's co-founder, Sebastian Puel, announced in February 2022 that he had departed the company after just 10 months. There's something a little different about PlayStation's plan to acquire Haven Studios. Historically, Sony likes to have a little dating period with a developer, where they might release a few games together before they get married. It's what happened with Naughty Dog, Sucker Punch, Guerrilla, Media Molecule, Insomniac, Bluepoint, and Housemarque. Yet Sony announced its partnership with Haven a little over a year ago. The developer may be full of established faces who are responsible for hit games such as Assassin's Creed, but it's still a new studio. It's still growing. It's not even announced the PS5 game it's working on, let alone released it. So why do the deal now? This may be due to PlayStation saw something so great that they want to marry Haven as soon as possible, and also due to keeping the talent in the studio and also providing a greater budget. The fact that the game is coming along strongly is certainly one very good reason to sign up the Haven team. But the acquisition will also give PlayStation something it has never had, a developer in Canada. Canada is one of the biggest producers of AAA games in the world. Most major games companies have a presence in the country, including Activision Blizzard, EA, Microsoft, Nintendo, Sega, Square Enix, Tencent, Take-Two and Ubisoft. It's actually a surprise to realize that PlayStation wasn't among them. I want to see what they are making. Until then I'm skeptical, as it is also a live service game. We have to wait and see what happens moving forward. Major PS5 and PS4 system software updates are rolling out globally, and I wanted to provide a quick look at some of the new feature, including details on variable refresh rate for PS5 on HDMI 2.1 compatible TVs and PC monitors, which is planned to release in the months ahead. This update is introducing some fan-requested features to the global community, like the ability to create or join open and closed parties on PS5 and PS4 consoles. On PS5, there are also UI enhancements to game base and trophy cards, as well as accessibility features like mono audio for headphones. PS5 players with accounts registered to the US or UK will be able to test drive a voice command preview feature that lets them find and open games, apps, and settings, as well as control media playback with their voice, English language setting only. For a refresher on PS5 features like how to apply game presets on your console, pin videos and apps to your screen while you play, or share your screen with friends, check out the new Pro Tips cards in the Control Center. This update is rolling out the ability for PS App users to create or join open and closed parties through the app as well. It also updated the PS App game base UI to make it easier to access the friends, parties and messaging features, delivering a consistent player experience with PS5. PS Remote Play mobile app users can enjoy a new dark mode based on their phone setting and choose from new screen reader languages for both iOS and Android, including Portuguese, Brazil and Portugal, Finnish, Swedish, Turkish, Greek, Thai and Chinese, traditional and simplified. Variable refresh rate, VRR, is planned to release on PS5 in the coming months. On HDMI 2.1 compatible TVs and PC monitors, VRR dynamically syncs the refresh rate of the display to the PS5 console's graphical output. This enhances visual performance for PS5 games by minimizing or eliminating visual artifacts, such as frame pacing issues and screen tearing. Gameplay in many PS5 titles feels smoother as scenes render instantly, graphics look crisper, and input lag is reduced. Previously released PS5 games can be fully optimized for VRR through a game patch, and future games may include VRR support at launch. As an added option, you can also choose to apply VRR to PS5 games that don't support it. This feature may improve video quality for some games. If this results in any unexpected visual effects, you can turn off this option at any time. Both VRR and this secondary option can be turned on or off. These are some quite good tweaks and updates, and in future we can expect themes, folders and other additions to the PlayStation 5 system. Recently, someone discovered a hidden Easter egg in The Witcher 3. Essentially, it focused on an NPC who is said to die in 7 years. If players wait 7 years in game time, then they'll discover this NPC is actually dead. This discovery is a bit ironic, because it's been nearly 7 years since The Witcher 3 has released. CD Projekt Red has, in that time, teased and discussed a potential new game, but it appears this Easter egg isn't the big CD Projekt Red news today. CD Projekt Red has confirmed the development of a new Witcher game on Twitter. It posted 2 simple things, a new teaser image and a link. Although the site quickly went down as fans flooded to the site, it simply says that a new Witcher game is in development, kicking off a new saga for the franchise. It further goes on to discuss its development on Unreal Engine 5, a partnership with Epic Games, and how details like a release window are not yet available. The most eye-catching part of this teaser image is the medallion. It's certainly not from the Wolf School, nor does it appear to correlate with any other Witcher school known to exist. This is seemingly very early in development, and a lot of CD Projekt Red's marketing and community contact will likely be focused on Cyberpunk 2077 in the upcoming few months. It's too early yet to say if Cyberpunk 2077 is redeemed for its launch yet, but this announcement is hopefully good news for the developer. Since the disaster that was Cyberpunk 2077's launch in December 2020, the otherwise stellar reputation of its developer has taken quite a hit, but business is continuing as usual. However, while pretty much everyone is referring to the next installment as The Witcher 4, it turns out that that's actually a bit of a misnomer. According to a recent tweet from the studio's PR director, Radek Grabowski, the new Witcher game will not necessarily bear the number 4 after its title. As well as announcing that the upcoming entry will not be exclusive to one specific storefront, it will also not be called The Witcher 4. What it will be called, they do not say, and much like the announcement of the game itself, the tweet is not forthcoming with any further details about what the new project will entail in terms of its story, characters, or game mechanics. Instead, it seems as though the next Witcher title will be a new saga in the series, and that its development will be led by Gwent, the Witcher card game director Jason Slama. Given these details, it's entirely possible that the new game may not involve the antics of one Geralt of Rivia. However, seeing as he is the eponymous character of the franchise, from the books to the games to the TV adaptation, it would be difficult for many to imagine a Witcher entry without the long-haired protagonist. At this moment, all anyone can really do is speculate until official word comes from the studio about further details. The third game is considered one of the best RPG titles ever, and as such, we have been anticipating a fourth game since the phenomenal success of 2015's The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Of course, alongside that, many will no doubt be wary of the game's development, marketing, and eventual release, given the initial launch of the studio's open-world sci-fi game. Nonetheless, the most eye-catching aspect is the image. The snow backdrop could allude to the Wild Hunt of The Witcher 3, but it could also just be a blanket of snow. The partially covered medallion truly takes the cake. It looks nothing like any Witcher school medallion currently in the franchise. The closest is the School of the Cat, but the structure is completely different. Indeed, looking at the ear positioning and the facial structure of the medallion, it looks very similar to a lynx. However, there is no official School of the Lynx. The game director hinted its shape, but there is a lot of fan-made information out there. It seems plausible that this medallion is hinting at a school never seen before, and that has major implications for a new Witcher game's character and setting. Since it is not a School of the Wolf medallion and this is not a known-to-exist school, it seems pretty clear that there will be a new protagonist in this game. Many have wanted Ciri to return as a Witcher protagonist, but this seemingly suggests otherwise. The second thing this immediately impacts is the time and period setting. This new Witcher game is likely to return to the continent, but this school poses some big questions. It's possible that this School of the Lynx is canonized as some predecessor or successor to the School of the Cat, removing this new Witcher game from the current timeline by potentially hundreds of years. Another possibility is that it's set in another universe very similar to the current one. Many know Ciri was able to travel through different universes, with one fan theory saying Ciri has been to Cyberpunk 2077's Night City. It seems unlikely that this would be the approach, instead using this new school to build new history and lore on top of already established bits in the main Witcher 3 trilogy. Depending on when it is set too, this could mean that there are new Witchers in the game. That opens a ton of doors, but few are as open as the main character. Having someone follow up Geralt will be incredibly hard. His character communicated a lot and a little and resonated with a ton of fans. Replacing him, however necessary, means that there will be comparisons to him. CDPR has to avoid making what amounts to a Geralt clone, but also strive to keep that Witcher persona intact. CD Projekt Red didn't necessarily need to move on to a new game development engine, at least, from an outside perspective. Both The Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077, even for all the flack the latter game received, were still both visually impressive open-world games. Those two games alone showcased the breadth of potential that was possible with CD Projekt's proprietary technology, capable of powering two vastly different game worlds. Though there are 5 years between both titles, neither title has aged poorly in the graphical department. That being said, the performance issues varied drastically between both games on release. Performance issues or capability aren't necessarily influencing the move to Unreal Engine either. The Red Engine has proven with both Cyberpunk 2077 on PC on Ultra settings, as well as The Witcher 3's Nintendo Switch port, that the engine is perfectly scalable to match all sorts of hardware the game is playing on. Unreal Engine has similar flexibility with its own software, but it's still very impressive for a proprietary game engine CD Projekt Red has been iterating on since 2011 with The Witcher 2 Assassin of Kings. What's more likely are other, more practical factors contributing to The Witcher's swap from Red Engine to Unreal Engine 5 instead. Unreal Engine has quickly become one of the most widely used game development engines throughout the gaming industry, boasting around 7.5 million developers, both AAA and indie, utilizing a version of UE for development. Though UE5 isn't quite as universally used yet, several new AAA games are being developed using Unreal Engine 5. The next entry in the Witcher franchise joins that same crowd, and likely for a good reason. Plenty of developers are familiar with Unreal Engine. There's a degree of predictability that developers can expect from Unreal Engine, which could certainly be beneficial for CD Projekt Red, especially after Cyberpunk 2077. Unfortunately, Cyberpunk 2077, and even to some extent The Witcher 3, though not nearly to the same degree, had pretty severe performance issues and bugs/glitches at launch. CD Projekt reeled back from the unacceptable release of Cyberpunk 2077, which was certainly not at the fault of the Unreal Engine, but potentially didn't help when it came to patching and updating the game post-launch. Using Unreal Engine means there's potentially greater support and knowledge of the engine to help solve and avoid performance issues and bugs and glitches preemptively. That can only help CD Projekt Red avoid any similarly drastic issues with the next Witcher at launch. Even beyond the potential and practical benefits of developing on Unreal Engine 5, CD Projekt Red likely isn't losing any kind of functionality, fidelity, or support by moving to a new engine. Though it may initially slow down development of the next Witcher game, this gives more time for CD Projekt Red to get familiar with the new engine. The end result of that familiarity should hopefully lead to an equally impressive game, devoid of as many performance issues and bugs as possible. Games like Stalker 2 and Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 are already showing off impressive visuals and design from Unreal Engine 5, so the potential is certainly there for the world of The Witcher to follow suit. Either way, CD Projekt Red is likely keen to avoid another situation like Cyberpunk 2077 on release, and Unreal Engine be the vehicle to do that. Gran Turismo 7 developers Polyphony Digital have released a statement from producer Kazunori Yamauchi apologizing for the problems caused by the planned rollout of the 1.07 update. In the post, Kazunori Yamauchi explains why a maintenance period for Gran Turismo 7 that was expected to last only a few hours had lasted longer than 24 hours. He goes on to apologize for the delay after explaining the unforeseen events that caused the problems. Yamauchi then explains the decision to lower the number of in-game credits awarded for certain events, and that microtransactions are in the game to represent the value and rarity of real-world cars. Polyphony Digital's statement on March 18, 2022 comes following an extended period of server maintenance which left fans unable to play most of the modes within the game for over a day. Update 1.07 caused a rare issue that the developers did not foresee during tests on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 or the QA sessions prior to the release of the update for Gran Turismo 7. Correctional Update 1.08 is out now. The statement addresses a big problem that players have had since the launch of the eagerly awaited racing simulator. The microtransaction system within Gran Turismo 7 has received significant backlash from players. But everything can be earned in-game, and those microtransactions may appeal to people that don't want to grind, but this update is a welcomed one. In the statement, Yamauchi defends Polyphony Digital's microtransaction structure saying, "Some event rewards have been adjusted. I wanted to also explain the reasons for it and our plans going forward. In GT7 I would like to have users enjoy lots of cars and races even without microtransactions. At the same time, the pricing of cars is an important element that conveys their value and rarity, so I do think it's important for it to be linked with real-world prices. I want to make GT7 a game in which you can enjoy a variety of cars in lots of different ways. If possible, I would like to try to avoid a situation where a player must mechanically keep replaying certain events repeatedly." He states that affected players will get a free credit pack of 1 million credits as a goodwill gesture. This amount will soon be added to their accounts, and players must log in before April 25 to claim it. The post goes on to explain that players must own a digital or physical copy of Gran Turismo 7 before March 25 at 1 a.m. Pacific Standard Time and log in between March 25 at 1 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time and April 25 at 1 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time to be eligible for this compensation. The post also mentions that Polyphony Digital will release a new patch in April that will modify the reward system in GT7 to bring a better balance to the game's economy. It then lists out some changes that are planned for the future, including an increase in the payout for completing limited-time events as well as the ability to sell cars. While Gran Turismo 7 not be struggling to achieve the same level of success as some of the previous games for now, it's still one of Sony's biggest franchises. Its gameplay is being universally praised and most of the complaints are directed towards the microtransactions, the always-online campaign, and the reward system. Hopefully, Polyphony Digital continues to listen to fan feedback and implements changes detailed by the post in a timely fashion, and I hope they unlock the ability to play offline, which is unnecessary. Moving forward, in the second Into the Starfield video, developers shed light on the design choices for player characters and how they interact with the world. Starfield is coming out on November 11th, exactly 11 years to the day Skyrim premiered to the gaming world. The expectations for Bethesda's new intellectual property are high, especially because it comes at a cost of the next Elder Scrolls title releasing a few years late. However, the developers of Starfield seem to have confidence in their project, as the game's marketing has slowly, yet steadily, started to kick into full gear. Having been posting animated concept art of Starfield's locations, this time the developers sat down, filmed, and edited a 5-minute video of Starfield's development process, highlighting their design scope and vision, as well as clarifying what players might expect from the game. This includes how it compares to earlier Bethesda titles such as Fallout 4, Oblivion, and Skyrim. The message is loud and clear: Starfield is a hard role-playing game. No, not in terms of difficulty, but rather that it represents Bethesda's return to its roots. Design choices from their older titles like Morrowind, Oblivion, and Fallout 3 might find their way to Starfield after being omitted in Skyrim and Fallout 4. Character attributes, conversation checks, and complex dialogue branches are all a possibility. In the second Into the Starfield video, the focus is all about the player character, and the two chief words are immersion and choice. Bethesda's goal for Starfield seems to be to offer an even greater sandbox than any of its past games could provide, and to allow the players to truly define what makes their character unique. A severely upgraded character creator, the inclusion of origin stories and backgrounds, and the return of attributes and stats have all been teased. However, it's not all about creating one's character in Starfield. Players want that character to evolve and grow, and what Starfield seeks to provide in this avenue is simple: the ability to join fully fleshed-out factions of varying morality, a rich universe that tackles all sorts of different sci-fi subgenres and aesthetics, as well as complex companion characters with their own stories to tell, a process that started with Skyrim Serana. Between the United Colonies representing the idealistic future of Star Trek, the Freestar Collective's rugged charm comparable to space westerns such as Firefly, or the Ryujin Industries providing the dystopian megacorporation feel from Blade Runner, players will have a lot of freedom to choose the faction that most represents what they want out of their sci-fi adventure. Even the Pirates of the Crimson Fleet will be a Starfield faction for the players to join, rather than just being an assortment of themed enemies to kill. According to Bethesda, Starfield will focus more on the relationship between companions and the player character. It seems that in Starfield, companions will be more vocal with their opinion of the player character and will feel more present in the story. Companions in previous Bethesda games often felt like they were just along for the ride, following the player character around the world and helping in fights, but not really reacting in a way that made them feel real. Starfield companions will apparently comment on what's currently going on in the game, and what the player character is doing, which should go a long way in improving the game's immersion. In any case, the Starfield companion shown in the video is a robot named Vasco. In the clip, Vasco says, "Hello, Captain. How may I be of assistance?" Players don't get to learn much about Vasco beyond that brief line of dialogue, but this does clue everyone in that Starfield companions will not be limited to humans. While we now know there will be robots in the game, Bethesda has been somewhat coy when it comes to whether or not Starfield will have aliens. There will be aliens in the game in the sense that there will be characters who aren't necessarily from Earth, but whether or not this means non-human alien species has not been made entirely clear. If Starfield does have aliens, then perhaps some of them could join the player character as companions as well, but that's just speculation at this time. One game, in particular, was mentioned as a source of inspiration, and that was Bethesda's previous title, The Elder Scrolls IV: Oblivion. In an RPG, interactions between the protagonist and the NPCs that inhabit the game world are a fertile source of storytelling, as well as a way for the game to convey its lore. When this is done poorly, the conversations can just feel like a means to an end as players wade through dry dialogue and poorly veiled exposition. However, when games add a little something extra to these interactions, like morality meters or even minigames like in Oblivion, it can make players sit up and pay attention. This also gives the conversations weight and adds consequences for chosen options, making them feel more authentic. Oblivion's dialogue system was dynamic and unique, with a wheel-based minigame and 4 conversational options for players to choose from. When players attempted to persuade a character, the minigame initiates, and they can invoke specific reactions based on which of the 4 options they chose. The more the wheels segment is filled in for one of the actions, the better it will be received by the NPC. These conversational minefields help to add stakes to the character interactions, and save them from being too straightforward or boring. In addition to the developers' stated intention of making conversations more nuanced and authentic feeling by borrowing a page from Oblivion's book, Starfield also wants to elevate the in-game companions. Conversational complexity is just one example of how Starfield will make its companion characters feel more real, as Bethesda strives to make the interactions between player characters and NPCs as impactful as possible. In a vast open-world game with a focus on players crafting their own narrative amid the chaos, having meaningful relationships and interactions will be key in providing any kind of emotional heft to Starfield, saving it from feeling as cold as its space setting. Starfield's companions will apparently have distinct opinions about the actions of the playable character, offering motivations for players to pursue certain paths depending on whom they want to please or alienate. This is a welcome change from some of Bethesda's older titles, as The Elder Scrolls V: Skyrim's companions felt wooden and fairly unresponsive. Having more reactive companions offers an interesting dynamic to gameplay, and could influence player decisions, like which of the many factions they will align themselves with or how lawful their actions will be within the multifaceted spacefaring society. As well as more in-depth and adaptive conversations, the companions will comment off the cuff about something that you're checking out or something that just happened, helping to provide more immersion for quests and gameplay in general. With an additional focus on making characters and environments feel as authentic as possible, Bethesda has leveled up its design in Starfield with tech based on scanning of real-world models. This all culminates in a game that is supposed to feel real and incredibly detailed, from its design to its character interactions. Only one of Starfield's companion characters has been shown so far, and this is the robot named Vasco. This was an interesting first glimpse to give gamers, especially when Bethesda has claimed that it wants the player interaction to have emotional weight and feel more realistic. While some games like Borderlands with its mouthy robot Claptrap have shown that mechanical companions don't necessarily have to be two-dimensional, players will no doubt be eager to see what the other NPCs will be like. Dialogue options in any RPG are important, but what ends up happening is players are left picking one of a few options, with that often only slightly tweaking what follows. In Oblivion, Bethesda tried something different by making persuasion a minigame based around a pie chart of sorts, with reactions being based on the NPC, the goal, how active the player is, and so on. It was pretty simplistic still, with there being a limited number of emotions and reactions involved. Bethesda discusses how it didn't set out to revamp the Oblivion system, but that it went well with its goals. When a player initiates conversation with an NPC in Oblivion, they'll often be given the option to persuade the character. When this dialogue option is chosen, the player begins a short minigame. A wheel to the left of the screen will appear with 4 distinct segments. These segments are labeled Admire, Joke, Coerce, and Boast. The NPC will have a specific reaction to each of these options, which can be seen when the player hovers over the action, and the NPC makes a distinct facial expression. There are 4 possible reactions indicated by these facial expressions, like love, dislike, and hate. During each phase of the minigame, each segment of the wheel will have a certain amount filled in, represented by an orange bar filling in that segment. The more that the segment is filled in, the more responsive that NPC's reaction will be. The wheel also has a disposition meter in the center, which will increase based on how positive the NPC is feeling about the player's actions. The general goal of the minigame is to raise this disposition meter by choosing the actions that the NPC will like or love. However, all 4 actions must be chosen in a given turn, so the player needs to strategize when they choose the options that the NPC will dislike or hate. When a player chooses an action, the filled-in segments rotate clockwise. The general strategy for this minigame is to choose the dislike and hate options when the segment is barely filled in, as this will hardly provoke a reaction from the NPC, and should keep the disposition counter high. By choosing these options in the right order, the disposition counter in the center of the wheel should continue to increase each turn, eventually resulting in a successful persuasion. If a player has a high enough speechcraft skill, then they will be able to rotate the segments for free once per turn, giving them more opportunities to choose the dislike and hate options when their respective segments are barely filled in. A higher speechcraft skill will also decrease the rate at which disposition is drained, giving the player more time to strategize. Bribes can also be used during the minigame to increase the NPC's disposition. To increase an NPC's disposition even further, players can cast various charm spells, or can use the imperial power voice of the Emperor. It may sound a little complicated when it's written down, but trying this minigame once or twice should be enough to understand what's going on and how to succeed. Bethesda briefly discussed some of Starfield's factions, some of which have been brought up before. This includes the Space Republic United Colonies, the Western Fantasy-style Freestar Collective, and of course, the big corporation in space, Ryujin Industries. Bethesda talks about how players may want to play good or bad characters, and either way, that gives them unique interactions with another faction, the Crimson Fleet. Of course, nothing is shown of the Crimson Fleet, but it appears to be a space pirate/raiders faction, but they're not just villains. Should players want to pursue an evil playthrough of Starfield, it seems the Crimson Fleet can be joined. Or, should they stick to their space guns and want to play the role of some space cop, they can find and report the Crimson Fleet to one of the better Starfield factions, which have been compared to Skyrim's before. It remains to be seen how the Crimson Fleet operates in comparison to the United Colonies, Freestar Collective, and Ryujin Industries. Chances are, it's not the only evil faction of the game, and there are likely to be more even if they differ in size. Really, it's kind of hard to imagine how expansive Starfield is given how little there's been seen of it, but its release is about 8 months away. Xbox wants Starfield to be the most played Todd Howard game to date, and the hype is there if the game can deliver in future marketing and reveals. As time gets closer to the release, as well as summer, more and more Starfield will be put out there. We still have to see gameplay, or a trailer with gameplay snippets for this to determine how it stands as a current-gen-only game, so, as usual we have to wait till E3, but if it lives up to Microsoft and Bethesda's promises, it could prove to be another seminal moment in the industry for Bethesda and gamers. And that's all for the video guys, like and share the video for a greater audience. Comment your thoughts on the topics and donations are always appreciated. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon, and until then from SMPV, it's goodbye.